So Rick, tell us about this OTA. We're
So
going to learn about this today.
yeah, OTAs are kind of the flavor of the month. Right? I'm sure that a lot of people have heard of OTAs. They're not widely used, I guess I would say, quite yet, although they're becoming more and more commonly used. OTA stands for Other Transaction Authority. And a lot of times OTAs are defined by what they're not, and what they're not are FAR or DFARS based contracts. FAR, DFARS, any other supplemental regulations do not apply. These are mechanisms for contracting that allow the government, or actually I should say certain federal agencies within the government, to be able to operate in a manner that is similar to a commercial entity. So NASA, DoD, Homeland Security, they have authority to issue OTs or other transaction authority based agreements. They're designed to attract non-traditional contractors, and universities are always going to be considered non-traditional contractors. But the point being here that if you see a solicitation for an OTA, I guess the tip would be don't be afraid to go back to the government with an entire document full of red lines and ask for some changes to be made. They fully understand that the whole reason that they're doing this is because they're looking for something that is more akin to a commercial contract, or at least is not a FAR-based contract or a DFARS-based contract. They know that these restrictions, these regulations are something that cause a lot of potential contractors to sit on the sidelines and to not submit proposals. So OTAs are a way that they can kind of bring in the non-traditionals, and they will not be upset. Trust me, they will not look at a document full of red lines and say, these people are going to be difficult to work with. We're not going to award them an agreement. So I guess the takeaway there is, like I said, with OTAs, they're only something that certain agencies can issue, but don't be afraid to submit edits because they're half expecting it. The government is half expecting to see that. Now, there are two types of OTAs. One of them is under 10 U.S. Code 2371 for research. The other is 2371B for prototypes. I will tell you that in my experience, it's more common, believe it or not, to see something under 2371B than it is under 2371. Part of the reason why is because it benefits the government to issue it under that statutory authority, because of the fact that if there is a successful prototype that has been submitted, the government has the ability to award follow-on contracts non-competitively. And that's something from a program office perspective, from a contracting officer perspective, that is extremely valuable. So that's good. Right? I mean, we certainly want that, and the government likes that. Now, the downside is that prototypes are usually not considered to be fundamental research. So you can't go back to the government and say, hey, this is a research agreement. The chances are their response is going to be, well, no, it's not. This is a contract for the development of a prototype. And because of that, you're more likely to see publication restrictions or maybe export controls or things like that. So it is something to keep in mind. It does kind of cut both ways. It's good in that there is that potential for follow-on work. It's bad in that they're not going to view it as a typical fundamental research effort. It's very much going to be a contract for prototypes, and you have to be aware of that because at the end of the day, at the end of the contract, you are expected to deliver a functioning, successful prototype. So
this is something for the central office to be aware of when departmental administrators bring these decide to respond to these solicitations. From those those OTAs, Rick, as you said before, they're usually issued by a specific number of Fed agencies, right?
That's right. There are 7 of them, probably more in the future. My suspicion is that there are going to be more agencies that will get that authority, not less. So, like I said, some of them right now, some of the more active OTA requirement holders are DoD, NASA, and Homeland Security. They tend to do a lot of OTAs. DoD in particular, you see it a lot with DARPA. So, the DARPA tends to
So tips for the administrators out there and central offices is: one, if you see a solicitation from any one of these federal agencies that Rick had just mentioned, be aware that the good thing is you have an OTA, you don't have to deal with DFARS. But on the other hand, be very careful that you're not dealing with a research on the, section 2371, that you're subject to it, or as Rick would say, the prototypes one seem to be the most prevalent. Then you run into dealing with fundamental research issues. So just tips from this slide as to what we need to do in terms of dealing with OTAs.